Okay, Factory Podcast number one. I'm Kevin Lucas, and I'm here with Adam Conley. Adam Conley was a pitcher for the Miami Marlins, and he is now with the Tohuku Rakuten Golden Eagles.
Yeah,
Was that good?
I think that was pretty good. I'm lucky. I'm lucky because I've talked to some of those guys over there, and after I blew it pronouncing it a couple times, I actually heard them say it.
So how do you actually say it?
Rakuten.
Rakuten?
Rakuten Golden Eagles. Yeah.
Rakuten
Yeah.
Golden Eagles. What
Yeah.
part of Japan is that in?
Yeah.
North, south?
Yeah. So on the main island there of Japan, about an hour and a half. Well, it depends on how you're going to get there. I say an hour and a half. Let's say by train, okay? An hour and a half by train north of Tokyo. Now, if you take a car and drive, I'm told it's like 3, 4, 5 hours.
Well, I'm sure traffic in Tokyo has got to be ridiculous with the number of people that that city has. I mean, I've never been to Tokyo, but I just looking at pictures of it, it looks like New York times 10. And I grew up in New York, so I know what it's like to have people on top of people on top of people, and it's that would be a little intimidating. So, and this is your first time in Japan?
Yep. Yeah, and I was actually supposed to be there already. Now, because of everything going on with coronavirus right now, the prime minister there had put in place a state of emergency that was supposed to be ended, on February 7th. That got extended till March 7th, and once that date comes, assuming that the ban does end March 7th, then I have to get my visas, then we go.
Wow, that's a long journey. So, are you going to have to get have a negative COVID test when you get there, or are you going to already have to have one before they'll even let you in the country?
Yeah, I don't know about the airport specifically because I've heard of testing going on at some airports and stuff, but it's required for me within, I think it's 48 hours of me leaving, to provide them with a negative test. And I've actually heard of a player who was ready to go over there to go over to Japan to play, and actually did get a positive on that test. It was within the 48 hours of leaving.
So they sent them back?
So they're we're all packed up, they're ready to go. And they get a positive test on this and got backed up even more going there. And then when we get there, we have a 14-day quarantine. Now, once you get through all that, my understanding, once you get all through that, there's protocols and there's stuff going on. But for the most part, I think it's actually pretty normal over there, is what I'm being told.
Okay.
Once you get through all that stuff. And I ain't through it yet, but once we get through that stuff, that's what I'm told.
So speaking of COVID, I know that was your thing with the Marlins.
Yeah.
So kind of walk us through with how that actually all came about. You're part of the I want to call it the Marlins 21. Was it 21 players and coaches and staff?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. The first. Yeah. When it finally came out, the first group or whatever you would call that, I think it was something like that. It was 19 of us or something. 21 something.
So how'd that actually come about? I mean, were they testing all you guys and you just happened to be random, or did they get a inkling? Did somebody get sick, come down and get sick, or what?
Yeah, I remember. So it was crazy because we had summer camp, right? Normally you have 6 weeks of spring training. When spring training winds down.
So this is February, right?
Yeah,
February 2020?
This is right now. The guys today. I think the pitchers for the Miami Marlins reported today, I think. So this time of year last year, we show up to spring and everything at this point is pretty much normal. Nobody's really heard anything. At this point I don't think anybody had really even heard much about coronavirus or anything. So we get 4 weeks into camp, or actually it was even closer than that. It was 10 days until opening day. And we've been hearing about this. We've been seeing the cases, and they've been following all this stuff. And we get 10 days away from opening day. That means we've cut guys, we've sent guys down. Now there's guys who have become free agents. There's some stuff that's happened. The rosters are getting narrowed down. We're 10 days out from spring training, and we have a workout for that day that's canceled or something. The day before they say we'll let you know. And we show up for a meeting the next morning, like at 9 in the morning or something. We show up, and they say, "Everybody go home."
That's it. Nothing.
It was
No.
like,
No
well,
details. Everybody go home.
It was like, they did their best to answer any questions. I mean, they didn't
Yeah.
know.
No one knew.
Nobody knew what was going on, And so, based on the health experts and whoever else they were all, talking to and all that, I mean, that's what happened. Everybody 10 days out from opening day gets told, stay in shape, do your best, go home. We'll let you know.
Wow.
Stay ready.
And that's about the time. That's about the time. When did you show up with? We'll talk about that at some point. With your wife basically calling me up and saying, "Hey, my husband's a pitcher for the Marlins.
Yeah.
He's looking for a new gym. Well, all right, what do you offer?"
Yeah.
Was that January or was that February?
I mean, honestly, I think
I think it was earlier.
The year was so strange that it's a little bit of a blur to me. I worked out here in the off season leading up to that.
Yeah.
So in the months before, in those regular off season months, November, December, all the way through
That's
there,
about the time,
we're
yeah.
lifting and all that. So anyways, so we get sent home from this. I got sent back, or I got called back to what we then called summer camp. In I don't remember now. I think it was like June or July or something. We go back to summer camp, and we go and have workouts with all these new rules and this whole agreement that's been established between Major League Baseball ownership and the union and all this stuff. All gets worked out. We finally get all these guys getting back to these facilities, right? And most of these clubs are going to either their spring training facility in Arizona, or for the clubs that could, we went down to Miami.
Right.
We stopped using the Jupiter facility. That became what they called the alternate site, where there was a total roster of 60 players or whatever able to. That became basically the minor leagues for the 2020 season.
Right.
Because there were no minor leagues being played, so there was no circumstance of a AAA pitcher on the 40-man roster pitching in the minor leagues able to get called up. That didn't exist. So they had to create this player pool to draw players from in case guys got hurt or something like that in the big leagues. So we get called back for that, and we're all basically going through spring training 2.0, what they called summer camp, where it was super limited hours, time slots, you got to come in during your time, everyone
Only a certain number of people and working out at the certain
you
time.
can't get your own food and all this stuff, and we make it through this whole thing without a single positive, I think, and that goes on for a month or something. We don't have a single positive. We go to Philly for opening day now. They've rewritten the schedule. It's a 60-game season. All this stuff's changed. We get to Philadelphia, and the second day after we're there, we have a couple guys start feeling sick.
Wow.
For a month, we didn't have a single positive. At the summer camp, Miami, all this stuff, right? So we get on our plane, we do our stuff, we travel. 2 days in, guys start getting symptoms, and it's 2 or 3 guys. And then it was 2 days after that, it was another couple of guys. And one of them was a starting pitcher. He was supposed to start, scheduled to start one of those days. And so all of a sudden, 3 days into the season, we're in Philadelphia for the opening series of the season. And we've got 4 or 5 guys down. I mean, our starting catcher, one of our starting pitchers. I mean, we had guys going down. And then it was Sunday rolls around, the third game of the season. And they're we don't know what we're going to do. We got to do more testing. We got to do all this stuff. So everybody gets tested again, and they ramp up the testing. And it was within a matter of, I think it was on that day, the third or fourth day, that the season had started.
So you guys...
They come out with 19 positives or something like that. Crazy. I don't know if I'm getting those days exactly right, but something crazy like that.
So you guys had actually gone through all that time, no positives. You actually pretty much stayed in your same group, right? And then you went and traveled and basically came down with it. You left your bubble and actually got on commercial airplanes, and basically maybe that's where you got it from, or you're outside of the control.
Well, the planes are chartered.
Oh,
so we're still
you're outside of.
There's staff on the plane that we weren't with. There's media, not media this year, but there's other staff members. There's just there's people that make this stuff work, right? I mean, this is, the Marlins don't by themselves just go get on a plane and fly by themselves and get on a bus and go to a hotel. I mean, it takes people to
you got all the staff,
maintenance the plane and clean and take care of everything and fly the plane and take care of it all. And then when you land there, you've got a bus driver, and other people have been riding on that bus, and you get to a hotel, and there's got staff at the hotel,
And the Northeast was like ground zero because of all the people coming from Europe that were, potentially infected by other people.
Yep.
Matter of fact, my brother actually, he works for an airline, and he actually came down with coronavirus, and he actually wound up in a hospital for an ICU unit on a ventilator for 3 weeks, and we thought we were going to lose him, and he wound up recovering. But that whole every airport from Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, all those airports, I'm sure were all taking international flights. So
yep.
It's a good. That's really kind of. I'm sure that's how you probably got it. But here you are. You busted your butt.
Yeah.
You've gotten yourself in shape. I was looking at your stats. That was kind of like your year. You were gonna make a transition into you doing middle relieving, right? And
yeah.
You were
kind of because I think the uniqueness of being left-handed. I think that it's hard to identify the role.
Right.
When I was pitching good, I was always pitching at the back end of the games, and that could look like a lot of different things. That could look like coming in and trying to get Freddie Freeman out with runners at second and third and 2 outs in the 6th inning.
Right.
Might be my time. Another day I might have the whole 9th and close the game and save the game. So it was it could have been any number of different things. Being left-handed, I think that in baseball, at least my observation has been that teams have been a little reluctant to have a left-handed pitcher be dedicated as the closer. Just from that old, I guess, belief, or the way that the game's been played, strategized, wanting to have an effective left-handed pitcher at the end of the game. If you dedicate your lefty as your closer, you don't want to send your right-handed 8th inning guy to face lefty, righty, lefty in the 8th, and you lose the game in the 8th and never get to your closer when your left-handed closer should have come in and faced the 2 lefties, kind of thing. So whatever that is, baseball's changing so much so fast that it's
a lot more statistics.
Yeah, I don't know how much that's going to remain.
Statistically driven,
yeah.
Which is it's kind of funny because I was talking to an old baseball guy.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Who we'll talk to him at some point, I'm sure.
Right.
But he's not so much. He understands the whole statistics thing, but he's more about feel and experience, and basically, they've seen a lot. So how did that feel, though? Coming out of you busted your butt, you've gotten yourself in the greatest shape that you can, because you know what you have to do, to all of a sudden have to shut it down like that and basically have to be in a holding pattern. That has to do things with your mind.
I can tell you for sure that physically it was very hard. It was. Well, I'll just say this. If we were just gonna really be honest, I can't take care of myself. I can't take care of myself in a hotel room without access to a gym, food, fresh air.
Yeah, you're isolated.
The reality is that, look, you have to do. Everybody had to do the best that they could according to everything, right? So baseball is a massive business. We're in the public's eye. There's so much going on socially, everything going on in the world, and the last thing that we want to do is do something out of ignorance or do something foolish, where we end up just causing ourselves problems that we don't need to cause, right? And however that would look. So there's so many angles to all this, right? That's why these massive organizations, these huge businesses, have people whose job it is to make sure you don't make mistakes, right? You don't do dumb stuff. So everyone's doing the best they can according to it all. And what ended up happening is basically a bunch of us just got stuck into a hotel for a long time. Some of the guys longer than others, depending on the test and where they were with everything. I think total, when it's all said and done, I think I was in a hotel room. I think I was in a hotel room 24 hours a day, every day for I want to say 12 or 13 straight days or something like that.
Wow.
Now in between that was like a super organized, like group by group, like marching us down to a bus from Philadelphia where we bus 17 hours, like sleeper buses, like like kind of like tarped off, like marked off, like everybody wear a mask, everybody like, you know, super careful, like all this stuff, where they bust us down to Miami in like multiple buses to keep us all spread out and like all that stuff. That was a whole ordeal that they did too. And and once we got down to Miami, then it continued where I stayed in the hotel for several more days down in Miami. I think it was another 3 or 4 days that I was down in Miami like that. So yeah, total, apart from that bus ride in the middle, I think it was like 12 or 13 days straight. And some of the guys longer.
So when you got done with this quarantine and you got your negative tests, right, and they were still, I guess, trying to figure out what they were going to do with the season at that point. They hadn't actually even started the season. I guess we're talking April.
At this point, the season was going on, but there was other positive tests coming out as the other teams traveled, and there was serious talk about. This was in July, I think it was, or something. Because remember everything, or no, it was, yeah, I think July. Because remember everything had been backed up so much from between regular spring training up till the month or so that it was of summer camp that we had, and then the season started late. There was other teams getting positive tests, and there was like serious talk about like
shutting the season
like let's
down.
shut it down, like, you know. And there was a lot. It was crazy. There was a lot going around, you know, because of all the positive tests that we had gotten and stuff going around of things that we were doing and all that. And I mean, it was just a crazy time. It was a crazy time. I mean, we weren't going out to the bars and partying and all that stuff and going around and breaking all the rules. We just, I mean, look, for one reason or another.
Well, you weren't.
It turns out that, well, it turns out that when someone's infected with this thing and you don't have symptoms for 2 or 3 days of it, and you're licking your fingers and you're touching a ball and you're sweating and you're working out and you're touching barbells and you're riding on planes and staying in the same hotel and doing everything. I mean, human beings we're relational, and we're around, you know, in the game of baseball, we're around so many other people that there's really nothing you can do to stop it from happening. There's nothing you can do to stop. I mean, there's just no realistic way that you can that you don't spread something.
Yeah,
it's just not really possible. You know, I mean, what more could we have done? And we see all this stuff still happening.
It's inherent in team sports. It's the camaraderie. It's the part of the whole togetherness of the group. I mean, there's a certain amount of cohesion that goes into the team sports. It's part of the chemistry. So you're around each other. You know, you're passing gas on each other. You know, you're doing wet willies, all kinds of stuff.
And, you know, they're saying stuff like don't spit on the field. Don't chew sunflower seeds, you know, don't high-five each other. It's stuff like this where it's like, you know, we had a lot of positive tests, but I mean, you go back and look at the tape, everybody's doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's spitting on the field. Everybody's giving hugs and high-fiving and chest bumping and stuff. Everybody is. So, anyways.
Yeah. So how did the Marlins wind up actually just bringing you to assignment, or what was the cause of them sending you to the minors?
Yeah, so I was still on the roster, but it was the alternate site in Jupiter where they were to basically go through all the protocols to get us back to the field. So we obviously had a big group of guys coming back, and then several guys that we brought up from that site, and then also there was a ton of moves made. Mattingly and Mike Hill and those guys all had to make a ton of moves basically to fill a team. We, you know, 19, I think it was 19 players or something were out, you know, so they had to make a ton of moves and get really creative and figure out a way to field a team. And man, the guys went on a tear, and they played really, really good baseball and won a lot of games in that beginning part of the season. And all these other guys, you know, that had been back at this other site are basically doing all we can do to try and figure out how to get back and jump through those hoops. Now, again, this was so unknown to everybody, and nothing was established, that it seemed like every couple of days, like the rules and what was required and all that was changing all the time.
Right.
You know, and so we were kind of, I suppose it's never a trail you want to blaze, but I suppose we were blazing that trail of figuring out, like, what does it take to get back? For me, it took, I want to say it was like 5 weeks, because by the time I was going to come back, there was only a little over 3 weeks of the season left, I think. When I finally got cleared.
How many negative tests did you have to have in order for them to clear you?
That was part of it. Was the rules and everything kept changing so much, was that off the top of my head now, I don't really remember exactly, but I think that there were guys who were going through the protocols and were getting cleared and coming back and playing that didn't have negative tests. So because of the guidelines or whatever that was had changed over time, there were, it had been determined, let's say, that if you had no symptoms and I don't remember all these details exactly,
right.
But it was something like, if you haven't had symptoms for 10 days or something, that you were, it was determined that you weren't contagious anymore. So even if you were getting the positive on the test, you weren't actually at, putting anyone at risk of transmitting it to somebody else or something. And so that was like one of the things that, at first it was, you needed 2 negative tests, and then it was something else, and then it was something else, and then it was something else. And so that was kind of always a moving target too.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So they send you down to the minors, and basically just what happens there? You just basically just are waiting, because there wasn't any minor leagues, right?
Right.
So you basically, what are you doing down there?
Yeah, so basically it was as soon as you were ready, after staying in a hotel for 2 weeks, and not being able to do a whole lot. After that, I went to my house where I was renting a house in Miami.
Right.
Was thrown in the street, thrown into a net in the front yard, 20 feet away into a net or whatever. Doing the best that I could, trying to do push-ups and backflips and swimming in the pool and trying to do anything I could, to try and stay somewhat in shape as best I could. And just try and spend as much time outside and in the sun as I could and everything, just sitting on the, out by the pool back there and trying to get myself right. And basically there was a time where I got cleared by the doctors to go join the alternate site in Jupiter. So we actually drove up to my house up here in Martin County. And I would make the drive from my house down to Jupiter and work out in my time slot, with my group of guys, and as soon as you were ready, you'd get on and throw a bullpen, and after you threw a couple bullpens, they'd clear you, to join the games. They had games going on.
Mm-hmm.
They were like inter-squad games. And once you got cleared for those, then you got to go pitch in those. And then basically once you were there, you were as close as you could get to them just making a decision at some point when they felt like you were ready. If they felt like you were an option, a better option than somebody they had up there, then they'd call you up. And right when I made it to that point was actually when I got designated. So I made it all the way to that point. I'd made it all the way back through all these, all the tests and all the stuff that I had to do and everything. I'd made it back to the point of pitching in a game. In that game, the inter squad,
right.
in the stadium there, all that stuff. I mean, at that point, like I said, there was, I think, less than a month of the season left.
Wow.
It was like 3 weeks of the season left, I think.
So, you were the 72nd pick.
Yeah.
Of the 2011
mm-hmm.
Major League Draft.
Yeah, it was a great draft.
Second round of how many rounds? Isn't it like 30 rounds or something like that?
It was 50 before, and there's been a lot of changes in that too in the draft over the years. We used to have what was called draft and follow, and I missed that by a couple of years. That meant that the team that drafted you before, if you didn't sign, and I don't know all the details specifically, but they had some type of right to reach back out to you the following year if you were draft eligible to draft you, to take you again. With that pick. Now they got rid of that, and then there was then they started to try and do hard slots on all the picks, where you started to get penalized if you paid over slot. And Josh Bell's a guy who comes to mind with me with the Pirates, a guy who got picked later in the draft, got paid higher money. Was one of the last guys that I can think of where something like that was going on, where they've tried to make changes to the draft where the best player goes first and gets paid the most, and then the second player goes second and get paid second most, and try and have the integrity of the draft be that way. Now, the year that I was drafted and signed, I was drafted out of high school as well. In 2011, when I was drafted and signed with the Marlins, there was actually, I think, 30 compensation picks in the first round that year. So the first pick of the second round was actually the 61st pick, I think, of the draft. It was a little crazy. They've got some other rules with the draft and all that. I don't know all the details of how those compensation rounds through the first 3 rounds, I think, get bigger, depending on moves, transactions that you've made, and things like that. So I don't know. Somebody else has figured that all out. I don't know.
So you went to Washington State.
Yeah.
You guys, were you a four-year player? Or did you go early?
I signed as a junior. I was young for my grade. You can at a 4-year school, you can sign as a sophomore if you're 21 years old, either at the time of the draft or within a certain range, I think, of the draft or something. I was young for my grade. I signed as a junior out of Washington State. I was a starter. When I signed. I began my professional career as starter, but I got told right from the beginning that you're going to be a reliever.
Your birthday is it's May 20.
Yeah, May 24th.
May 24th.
Yeah.
1990. You were like, I know, like, my birthday's in December, so I was a late baby. So I went actually a grade earlier. They put me in the school a grade before I was supposed to. Like, I was 4.
Yeah, there you go. So you were really young for your grade.
Yeah, so I was really young. So I always thought that it was like after, if your birthday is like later in the year, that basically, and they put you in, then you're like considered a early year. So you're a Kennewick boy.
Yeah.
Kennewick.
Not many people probably know about Kennewick.
Well, I have a little history with Kennewick and Washington State because I left New York and I went to junior college in Bellevue.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time in that area. So I still have a lot of like really good friends that actually that live up in the Seattle area. We used to actually back in the I'm not even going to let you know the time frame because when I look at your age and I think about, well, you know what, I think about the couple of weeks after you were born, I was driving to Florida in my little 78 280Z to actually start working for FPL like years ago. But we used to drive to Walla Walla. We played the state tournament. Was in Walla Walla.
Yeah, my mom's from there. My grandparents still live there.
And then there's also the state prison is there.
Yeah.
We used to always say you never wanted to go to the state prison, but I had friends that actually had relatives that were there. And we used to go to Yakima, which was also another place on the eastern side of the state. The first time we ever drove from Seattle to Yakima, you go along I-90, and I-90 sits right, the Columbia River is right there.
Yep.
And you had all of these cross braces, they look like with nets. And I'm a New York kid. I mean, I grew up in the city. I'd actually never seen a river except for the Hudson River.
Yeah.
And the only thing I saw in the Hudson River was poop floating out of these things, because they used to discharge sewage in there, right? So I'm asking my coach, what's up with these nets and these these cross braces? And he goes, that's to catch the salmon when they're spawning. You mean to tell me they actually catch fish in this river? He goes, yeah, they actually do catch fish in this river. So that was a pretty big deal. So were you a multi-sport athlete in high school?
No. No, I was, it's unique, I would say. I've talked to a lot of baseball players where this isn't their experience, but I actually decided I wanted to play baseball at a really young age. And I was 7 actually when I first told my dad I want to pitch in the big leagues. I want to play Major League Baseball. And
7.
It's strange, yeah. I have a 7-year-old son right now actually, and most of the things that come out of his mouth, I don't really anticipate him sticking with, for the long haul, And that's what's so unique about my story is that when I told him at 7 years old I wanted to play baseball, I actually really meant it my whole life ever since then. And so I was always a small kid, weak, slow, small, like I said, younger for my grade, physically really developed late, and the truth is I really just wasn't talented enough to put any of my effort and work and training and all those things into other stuff. I really wanted to play baseball, and I just wasn't good enough at it naturally to do anything else. So I really dedicated really my time, my effort, everything that I was doing towards baseball.
How old were you when you got your growth spurt?
I would say I really had two between my I got a lot taller between my sophomore and junior year of high school, but I didn't really grow much that year in like strength or anything like that. I got 4 or 5 inches taller or something. So by the time I was a junior in high school, I think I was probably about maybe 6'1" or so, where I'd like grown up, quite a few inches. But I would say between 17 and 18, I physically matured quite a bit, and I would say I did it again from 19 to 20. So really, those 2 years, I went from 17 years old in high school. I was probably, in the beginning of the year, probably 5'10" or so, 5'11" or so, maybe 155 pounds or something, to the time that when I was 20 was 6'3", 190 pounds, and I went in that time from throwing 83 miles an hour to 97 miles an hour. So I was really behind my whole life, really behind, had to work my tail off, had to do everything, right, had to play the game hard, couldn't take any plays off. I just wasn't talented enough. I wasn't physical enough. And then by the time I was 19, turning 20, and had physically caught up, how hard I played the game and how hard I competed and how all the things that I had to do to keep up with everybody else before ended up really kind of shooting me up above everybody else when physically when I caught up to the other kids.
So how did to get a scholarship? I assume you had a scholarship to Washington State.
Yep.
So to get a scholarship to a Pac-10 school is a pretty it's a pretty big goal, pretty good goal.
Yeah.
So if you weren't that good, are you just like or your own worst critic, where you're basically you didn't think you were that good?
Yeah, I certainly could be guilty of that. But like I said, one of my growth spurts that I had the first time was from 17 to 18. My senior year, I was probably 6'2", 170 pounds or so, and I pitched at like 84 to 86 probably as a starter.
Which for back then is probably
well for the Northwest. For the Northwest, that was a pretty good fastball for up there. Now, if you go to like Texas and watch high school baseball, or here in Florida, there's high school kids throwing 93, 94 all over the place. Southern California, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, Florida. But in the Northwest, there's just not as big of a talent pool up there, especially for baseball. It's a hard place to play baseball. Very rarely do you hear about baseball players coming from like Minnesota, coming from Montana, coming from
obviously because of the weather.
Yeah, it's just not very conducive to it, and a lot of people just don't. It's just harder.
Besides, basketball is kind of like the sport in Washington State. They're basketball crazy.
So I'd go up there to go try and pitch a game, and a game would be postponed 3 hours because of rain, and then we're playing in the dark and in the rain on a rain-soaked field. It's just harder for the scouts to stick around. They just don't want to. There's not as much talent, and it's just harder to go watch. And so I had one of those growth spurts from 17 to 18, and actually, it's funny. You talk about the Pac-10 and getting a scholarship and all that. I got a minimum scholarship from Washington State the day that I paid money to go to one of their camps. They run camps for kids, these big colleges, that the players help run and all this stuff, and it helps raise money for the programs and all this stuff. And I went and paid money to go throw a bullpen for Washington State, trying to get there. And I went in there in December or whenever it was, and went in there with my hair on fire, trying to throw the ball, as hard as I've ever thrown it in my life, trying to get on this team. And that's what happened.
Wow.
I mean, I pitched my whole summer season, senior season, my whole summer league, my senior year, and everything. Made it all the way to the winter. I had to pay money to go to one of those camps. So when you see that I got a scholarship, when you see that I've played in the Pac-10, I mean, it took some doing. I wasn't like some stud, who was their first pick, who gave me, a full ride or something like that. It was like I had to scrape and claw and pay some money and get to the camp and be ready to go in December to go try and be good enough in one bullpen to give me a shot to get there, and that's how it worked out.
So here you are, you get drafted by the who was your team for the you're in the. Did they put you into AAA right away, or did they put you in the Single A?
When I signed with the Marlins,
yeah, signed with the Marlins.
So when I first signed, again, this is some of the other rules that had changed. When I signed in 2011, back then the signing deadline was August 15th, which is the date that I signed. Now, if you sign August 15th, I mean there's almost no baseball left unless you're in the major leagues, which I wasn't, obviously. So when I signed August 15th in 2011, I went because the rookie ball team was right there with the facility. I went and threw 2 innings in relief with them that season. That was all I pitched in that year. The season ended of it. Now I think they've moved the deadline up a month or something like that, and guys play more now when they first signed. So when I came back for my first spring training in 2012, I was in minor league camp, and I told the pitching coordinator every day of spring training that I was going to break with the high A team and I was going to pitch there in Jupiter for my first full season team. And he told me every day that I was going to go to low A and go to Greensboro. And man, I dominated everybody I pitched against. I don't know what the numbers were. I mean, I dominated everybody. And just like he said, I went to Greensboro. So my wife and I loaded up a U-Haul and drove 12 hours to North Carolina up there. And for the first half of that season, I pitched in Greensboro. And man, we loved it. We loved Greensboro, and we learned a lot. We had been married just a couple of months at that point. My wife and I didn't have any kids or anything, and we were kind of on this baseball adventure together. And at the All-Star break that year, got called up to go pitch back in Jupiter here, or I guess down there. We're in Martin County up here, but so I ended up in Jupiter that year, high A. But the pitching coordinator was right. I went to Greensboro to start that year. That was low A.
So what do you think about the transition, at least from competition wise, from college going to the pros?
Yeah.
You're still you're professionals now. You're hitting against where you used to have like 1 or 2 guys that basically that were good players. Now everybody's an all-star or a all-American, somebody that actually has some kind of standing. How did you feel? Did you feel you belonged there? Did you feel that or did you feel that you still needed to prove yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that there's a lot of guys who struggle with that. I know there's a lot of guys that I think that when they get to professional baseball, they think that because they made it to professional baseball, that's kind of like that's really satisfying to them, and that's kind of like what they were hoping for. And so by getting that, then it's like anything beyond this is just icing on the cake, right? My view, like I was telling you, my view was always that basically I was going to pitch in the major leagues for 20 years and be a Hall of Famer, or it was a bust. That was always my view through my whole life, and so I wouldn't necessarily tell you that's the course that I'm on right now. I don't know if I'm gonna go 10 more years playing professional baseball at this point. We have 4 kids and super involved in our church and things like that, and I'm getting older and just burdened for my family and things like that. And so we revisit every year how that looks. Now I'm a year by year basis of how long am I gonna keep doing this. But at that time, early on in my career, I mean, in my head it was like, it was no different to me. I was used to having to grind it out. I was used to having to figure it out. I was used to being, I was actually, up to that point in my life, most of my life, I was used to actually being one of the least talented players on the field. So when I showed up as a professional at this point in my life, having success, when I wasn't very talented, and then obviously, like I said, catching up, and being a left-hander, a low slot, really deceptive delivery, really funky, My fastball just, I can't, there's nothing I can do. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, I can't throw the ball straight. I mean, so I'm never sore. I always feel good. My arm always feels good. I recover very fast. And I could throw hard, and I had this special fastball. Man, I was hungry. I was hungry to figure it out and get to the big leagues and dominate. I mean, I was like, I didn't even care. I didn't even care if I thought other players were better than me, or if I thought that they were more. I mean, I literally had lived my whole life beating those guys that were more talented than me because I just didn't care. I was gonna figure out a way to beat them. And so when I finally caught up physically, then it was almost like just like more fuel on the fire. It was like, now I think I'm as talented as you are, like, and I know how to compete. Like I'm gonna fight harder at this than you are, and that was my mentality. And not to say that the dude standing in the box didn't have the same. I hope he did. That's what makes baseball. That's what makes sports great.
That's what makes sports.
Hopefully, the other guy on the other side is sitting there saying, "Man, I don't care if this guy throws 97 or not. Like I'm gonna eat this guy's lunch today. Like I'm gonna dominate this guy." And that's what people come to see, right? I mean, you know this from your long history of playing basketball and all your involvement with basketball at many levels and all over the world. That's what people want to see. They want to see the best guy on the mound versus the best guy in the box, and everybody's sitting there saying, "What happens? You know, this guy doesn't ever give up any hits. This guy always gets hits. When you put them together, you know which one's going to win." That's what everybody shows up to see, and that's kind of what I was after. I wanted to be the best guy on the mound facing the best guy in the box for everybody to see.
Where do you think you got that spark to compete? I mean, that work ethic. You said 7 years old, so I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, it has to be. It has to be your parents. Your parents actually have to have played some role there, some role model. I don't know what it was, but who do you think actually brought that to you?
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, I believe with all that I am that God knit me together to be this way. It was God's intention that I would be the way that I am. Certainly never to the degree of like sinning or foolishness, but that whatever my character is, in the way that I would speak, the way that I would handle my business, my view of things, I have no doubt about that. But I will tell you that I believe that that was shaped, that my character and just my fibers, right, just who I am, who I was born to be, was certainly shaped and directed, I would say, a lot by my dad. My dad, I would tell you a couple things about my dad. My dad was born and raised in Kentucky. Played football growing up. Went straight to the Army out of high school. After a few years of that, and meeting my mom and having my brother early on, I've got one older brother. He got into the reserves with the Army and went to the academy to go be a state patrolman. He was either going to do that in Kentucky or Washington, because that's where my mom's from and that's where my dad's from. It ended up being Washington. Ended up being a better deal for my dad to go out there. So that's why I'm from Washington. It was going to be either Washington or Kentucky. And growing up, I have some memories as a kid of my dad being in the reserves with the Army, but almost all my memories of my dad is of my dad pulling up in a cruiser with a badge, and
I remember the Washington State Patrol.
Yeah. So listen, but even more than that, and I looked up to my dad for that. I always knew. I thought if baseball doesn't work out, I said I'll go be a cop. I'll go get into law enforcement because it's what I know. And all my dad's buddies are his work buddies, and he's got these stories and all this stuff. And I loved it as a kid. I loved it. I looked up to my dad for that. But I'll tell you, as a man now, looking back, what I'll tell you, I'll just give you two examples of things that I think most shaped and directed how I was going to work. Is the first thing I'll tell you about my dad is that I have never in my life heard my dad complain about anything, ever. And that really stands out to me. The other thing that I would tell you is there's one day in particular that I can't forget. I was a kid. I must have been like 8 or 9 years old or something. And my dad tells me, we're going to go out here and build this woodshed back here in the backyard or something. It was like we were going to do a whole thing where we were going to redo the whole lawn and lay sod on the yard and all this and build this woodshed back here. And I remember being so excited to go out there with my dad and work, carrying wood and hammers for him and giving him, he's asking for a tool and I hand it to him, and I'm out there carrying logs around and ripping up grass, and I'm watching my dad drive a tractor around and stuff, and I thought it was the coolest thing. Well, at 8 or 9 years old, after about an hour, I'm like, hey, like, I'd like to climb a tree or go throw a ball or something, like
it's this, like, we're not done.
Yeah, I'm like, this is great, but like, all right, like this, we've been out here for a little while, and it's like in the morning. He got me up in the morning, we're out there working. And I'm not kidding. He was out there working all day long doing this. And this wasn't the only example, but this is just one example of a time, cutting logs with my dad growing up or something, whatever it was, where he just worked until the job was done. And he didn't sit around and take breaks. He didn't cut corners. He didn't do it wrong. He didn't, do it his own way. He did it right. He did the work right, and he did the work until it was done. And that's kind of how I grew up, with the expectation when something needs to be done, you do it. You don't try to figure out a more clever way so that it can get done without you having to do it. You just do it. You just do the work. You do what it takes to do it. And those are, I'd say, two examples, of how my dad specifically really directed that.
Nice.
In us, my brother and I.
So do you remember when you first got called up to the show?
Yeah, of course I do. It's really interesting. Probably not what you're going to expect. And I'll try and tell a very long story short, but I was actually furious when I got called up.
Of course.
I was furious.
Of course.
I was furious, man.
Why did it take so long?
Listen, like I said, I'll just say that the Lord saved me when I was 20 years old, and I was a sophomore at the end of my sophomore year in college, my sophomore summer, and so at that point I'm 20 years old, and at the point in 2015 when I got called up, I was 25. So over the course of these couple of years, I just really learned a lot, grown a lot in my faith, and just at this point, fallen in love, gotten married. My wife now, I'm a couple years into my professional career. We're pretty well established in that and kind of doing our thing. And along the way with all that, I had actually been leading a Bible study on my AAA team in 2015, the year that I got called up. So if you don't know anything about AAA baseball, AAA baseball is like a different animal. It's full of, I would say, like just a couple of types of people. AAA baseball is full of like players who used to be in the big leagues and think they should be in the big leagues right now. And it's also full of a group of players who have never been in the big leagues, but really think they should be in the big leagues.
Exactly.
And so there's maybe a couple other little groups sprinkled in there, but generally speaking, that's what you're going to have. So it's a very interesting place to be as a player for the first time. In 2015 was my second parts of 2 seasons, my second season of being in AAA. Well, I had out of the 25 guys on the roster, there was 18, 19, 20 guys coming to my Bible study. This shouldn't be happening with these types of groups of guys, right? It's just not really normal. And so I was pretty captivated by that, and really wanted to serve those guys well, and wanted to continue to teach and share with those guys, to the degree that I was so focused on my faith at that point, and so focused on that my prayers for a couple of days were actually looking like, God, if I have to trade an opportunity in the major leagues to stay here and serve these guys, then I said, then I trade it, and I know God doesn't work in this bartering, type of idea, but that my prayer basically is that I don't want to leave. I want to stay here and I want to serve these guys. So for the first 18 years, from 7 years old to 25, so for 18 years I've been trying to get to the big leagues, and I'm like, I want to go. So for 3 days I was praying like this. Just 3 days I was praying, I don't want to go to the big leagues, I want to stay here. And I was pitching really, really good. So 18 years I try to make it to the big leagues and I don't make it. In 3 days I'm praying, I don't want to go. I want to teach this Bible study. I want to serve these guys. And on a Sunday in AAA there, while we're at home, I think they're about to leave on a road trip, the manager calls me into the office and says, you're going to the big leagues. And so I waited for everybody to clear out and all that. I went to my pickup truck and cried because I was angry. Now, I was up for a couple days. I got sent right back down. I was down for a month. I made a spot start in the big leagues. I got sent back down. I got called back up again a month later in August, and I stayed up, pretty much the rest of the time. And the Lord was faithful in that. I've had a lot of great opportunity with ministry, things like that, at the major league level and through spring training and through all sorts of other stuff. The struggle really ultimately isn't God's problem. It was my it's because I'm human. I could not see all that God was up to. And so really sinfully was angry about what was happening, and the Lord corrected that, and it's been a great journey. I mean, obviously, once I got up to the big leagues, it's like, well, it counts now. So it's like get after it now. Like it's like so.
If you want to stay here,
I very much had a high level focus of trying to figure that out, and I tell a lot of people, it's amazing to me. I think in the first 2 months that I was in the big leagues in 2015, I was up and down twice, and then in August I was up the rest of the time. So for those 2 months that I was up at the end of the year, man, I will tell you, in those 2 months of being in the big leagues, I learned more about the game of baseball and about pitching and about hitters than I had in all my professional experience combined prior to that, which was 3.5 years or something of professional baseball.
You played with some pretty, some pretty notable guys. I
did,
mean, we ever get starstruck? I mean, you played with Ichiro.
Listen, I sack bunted him to second base before in the National League, and I was a starting pitcher, so I was still hitting, and he would either hit leadoff or eighth. And so on some of the days that I would start or something, I'm sitting on the on deck circle getting ready to hit, watching Ichiro hit, right there on the field. So, yeah, man, played with a lot of really, notable would be, I would say, a good way of putting it. Maybe even a conservative way of putting it. I mean, I've played with some really special players.
Yeah, you played with, didn't you play with
MVPs?
Giancarlo Stanton?
Yep. Multiple MVPs and All-Stars and Hall of Famers, and I mean, I've been blessed in that for sure. There's been a lot of really cool opportunities.
You even had Barry Bonds as I mean, he was a hitting coach, but I'm sure you probably talked to him.
He was a hitting coach, so he'd come and every once in a while he'd come and throw the starting pitcher's BP. I'd go hit batting practice on Barry Bonds, man. I mean, listen, I don't know. This probably isn't an argument for a left-handed pitcher to be making, but I mean, I think he's the best baseball player who's ever lived. Barry Bonds.
His, I went to school in California, and his dad's brother was a guidance counselor at Poly.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Robert Bonds.
Yeah. And
so we used to talk all the time. Big, huge bear of a man.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm 6. Back in college, I'm 6'5", 200 pounds,
yeah,
right?
You're used to being the biggest guy.
Yeah, I'm used to being one of the biggest guys. Even though I wasn't the tallest guy on my basketball team, but I remember going and meeting him when they were going on my visit, and they introduced me to him. Walt, my chaperone, basically introduces me to him. Says, "Yeah, this is Robert Bonds. That's Barry Bonds' Barry Bonds' father's brother."
Uh-huh.
And he shakes my hand, and literally, I thought I was in a vice.
Yeah, it's like rock.
Yeah, it's like his hand, and big old, ham hock of a hand, and he basically just, just crushes.
Barry's got him too.
Come to find out, he's a black belt in karate. So now I know why his hands are like so rough and huge. Let me ask you. So on another note, I remember reading actually watching a YouTube clip about your relationship with the pitcher that passed away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you guys kind of came up about the same time, and basically, how did that affect you?
So Jose was the first rounder of my draft class. So in rookie ball, I was there with him in. We got close pretty early on. We were roommates on the road in the minor leagues. His girlfriend in the beginning, but soon wife, got very close with my wife, and we knew their families, his agent, the whole deal. We'd spent time together on the road and all that stuff. So the only time that I didn't play with Jose was in 2014. He was supposed to come to Double-A with me. In 2013, he was supposed to come to Double-A with me. He had never pitched above High A, and he made the opening day roster in the major leagues. I think he was 20 years old or something, or 21 or something. I don't know if he'd even yet turned 21 years old. So he goes. So he was in the big leagues in 2013. I was in Double A. In 2014, I got hurt and he got hurt. So neither of us played much. He had Tommy John that year, I think. And then in 2015, when he came back from his Tommy John surgery, I made it up to the big leagues. So apart from that year and a half there or so, I'd pretty much played on his team basically everywhere I went. I told you before about how halfway through the season in Greensboro, my first year, I got promoted. I lived with Jose on the road in Greensboro, and we both got promoted to Jupiter, and we lived together on the road in Jupiter, and the season ended, and all that. So we were together that whole way through all that. So when I heard the news, when we all heard the news that Jose had died in the boating accident, I knew that it was a very unique thing going on. I think there was only maybe one other player on our team, Jeff Mathis, who had gone through something like this before. When I forget his name now off the top of my head, but he was with the Angels like years before this, like maybe even like almost 10 years before this or something, where the Angels had an active player on their major league team that had died. And I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But other than that, I mean, this is something that you don't deal with every day, So this was a very, I don't know. I mean, this was just a crazy thing to go through. To get a phone call that's like, hey, there's no game today. Come to the clubhouse and we'll have a meeting. When, I mean, he was one of the best right-handed pitchers in the world. But it's like, and we all knew how good he was, but it's like, he's your teammate, though. He's your friend. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that every baseball player is best friends with every guy on their team, or that, we all stay in touch in the off season or long after we're retired. I'm not saying that for a second. But people have to realize, like, we do spend 10 hours a day together almost every day for like 7 straight months. So when you talk about like even if the guy's not like my best buddy or something, like, I see that dude going to war every day, and like I'm going to war with him every day, and it's like there's something about that where there's a bond with those guys and a care for those guys that's different, because I don't have that with anybody else,
Yeah.
I don't have any of that going on with anybody else, and these are the guys that we're going and trying to basically have this one singular goal in mind, and we're bringing in all these people to come do it together, and that's what we're all working towards every day. So when it was something different than just, we lost a great pitcher. He was our teammate. He was a guy who came and worked with us every day and traveled with us every day, and we knew him and we knew his family and we knew about him. And I'll tell you that what it did was it heightened my awareness that, and this is how the Lord saved me too, but it heightened my awareness that the game of baseball or talent or those things ultimately is not going to fix all your problems, and it's not going to satisfy you ultimately. Being the most talented pitcher on the planet and being rich and famous wasn't good enough for Jose. And that's why he got into that mess and was doing other things. He was searching somehow to be satisfied, to something. And, I mean, being one of the best right-handed pitchers on the planet, probably a future Hall of Famer, wasn't enough. That's just the nature of a human being, is that the things of this world just won't satisfy us. And so it heightened my awareness that even though these guys around me seemed all to be doing so well because they drove expensive cars, because they had big contracts, because they were Hall of Famers, it really challenged me in examining my own heart. It challenged me to consider how to better serve those guys and consider how important it is day in and day out, the words that we speak, the way that we live, because Jose was, 23 years old or something, and he dies, and nobody thinks it's going to happen. And so we should, what happened was I'm sitting here thinking, man, we should pay much closer attention to the lives that we're living, because we can't take tomorrow for granted. You don't know what's going to happen. Those 2 other guys that were on the boat with him that night probably didn't think they were going to die in a boating accident that night. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have gotten on the boat, right? I mean, you don't think it's going to happen.
We don't know. We don't know when our time is coming.
That's right.
And
so it was sobering for sure. I should say that it was sobering.
I definitely know that feeling. I had 2 of my college teammates die in 2 different. One in a car accident. We were actually co-captains my senior year. We were really close, and every year, his sisters actually put something on Facebook about it. Yeah, I remember the date, but I remember that was a pretty sad time, just from, because he was, we're all the same age. We when you, especially like you say, when you go to war together, when you go to war together, your roommates on the road, when anything is bad or anything, is going on with the team, you're the guys that actually get together, to try to help to fix it, it's definitely it's a different feeling. So I wanted to ask you that because I watched that YouTube clip on where you basically talked about it and about your faith, and I thought I needed to ask that of you to see how you felt about it.
Yeah.
So speaking of hearts, Kendall.
Yeah. You should have had her on here.
Well, she could be next.
Listen.
So you got married in 2011?
Yep, end of the year, yes.
End of the year?
Yep.
And you got 4 kids. 3, you adopted your nephew?
That's right. Yeah, my 7-year-old son was my nephew, and now he's my oldest. So that's a little different.
So how did that happen?
Yeah, man, that's a little bit of a crazy story in our life. So in 2015, the year that I got called up, so my wife had given birth to our firstborn, our oldest daughter, Amelia. She's 5 now. She's actually just about to turn 6 in a couple days.
Your kids are precious, though, by the way.
Thank you. It's good for me to hear that. Sometimes when you follow them around all day and and all that, it's good. It's good. They're good kids, and we love them. I mean, they've been a huge blessing to us. And in 2015, Amelia had just been born a few months earlier. When I first got called up to the big league, she was like 6 months old or something. We knew we wanted to have kids. We didn't know how many we were going to have. So anyways, Amelia's grown up. We're getting a few years down the road, and Kendall gets pregnant with our second daughter. And we have Amelia, and at this time, my nephew, who we actually, another long story short, we were actually going to adopt him at birth. It ended up, my sister-in-law ended up raising him for a few years and things, and again, there's a whole thing to that. It wasn't. She wasn't doing particularly well. Barrett, my son, was kind of in the middle of all that, and so Kendall was about to give birth or had just given birth to our second daughter. When I basically said, I've got girls. Barrett's getting older. Like, to protect my girls and to look out for them. Like, I really, I'm not gonna adopt him when he's 13, and I might be putting my girls at risk or something like that, where we don't know where we're getting into, kind of thing. So we were urgent about protecting our girls and getting him young and trying to establish discipline and routine and things like that in his life to help him. And so we basically said, if you'll adopt him to us now, then we want him, and if you're not, then I don't know. I don't know if we're going to do it, and so we had a lot of long conversations with her, and she ends up leaving him with us in Florida during the season, and so we went from having the one daughter, Amelia, to having 3 kids within like 6 months or something. And what I was saying, what was unique about Barrett, about adopting, is that usually adoption happens, and I just say usually to generalize, but usually people have kids, and if they want to have another kid, they'll sometimes adopt so that they have another kid, and adoption's a beautiful thing and all that, and they want to do that. You don't go through all the pregnancy and the birth and all the stuff or whatever, and that's typically like, again, I'm just being very, very general here of how it goes. So it's a little unique for us that the child we adopted actually was after we had kids, but is actually our oldest. So Barrett is actually he'll turn 8 in June, and so we've had him now for over 3 years, and He's doing very well. My wife homeschools. Like I was telling you, you should have had my wife on here. Much smarter than I am, much more athletic than I am.
Well, she's
biology major at Washington State, pole vaulter, gymnast growing up, homeschools the kids. She's a savage, man. She's a warrior.
She's so I mean, she's a blog. I mean,
blogs.
I saw blogs. Does she still blog?
Oh yeah, every day. Every day. We've been married almost. This September will be 10 years. She's written a blog post every single day. It's like, I don't even know what it is now. It's like 3,400 days or something or whatever that she's written a blog post every day straight. I mean,
wow. I went through some of it. I didn't go through all of it. Just to kind of understand a little bit more about.
Very good gymnast growing up. She got too tall. That's why she had to stop. My wife's 5'9".
Yeah.
And she was breaking her toes every year and stuff, hitting them on the bars and stuff.
Center of gravity. Just center of gravity.
So she found the next best thing to gymnastics, and that was fly through the air on a
pole
vault. Yeah, 13 feet up in the air.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, she's So I think there's maybe one or two girls who had pole vaulted at Washington State. I think that went on, one of them for sure, I think in the Olympics, and then the other one I'm not sure. But other than those two girls, I think she's got the next highest pole vault in Washington State history. I think it's 13.5 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Still,
listen, she's an amazing woman. I
yeah.
love her very much.
And especially
she's a good mom.
Being able to, I mean, 4 kids. That's a lot of that's a lot of work.
And it's not just 4 kids too. I mean,
she's taking care of you.
Yeah, and listen, that's no joke. That's no joke. And with baseball, I leave a lot. I'm gone a lot. And so that's when I say I'm burdened for my wife, for my kids, we revisit every year. A lot of people would think, man, you have an opportunity to go play professional baseball for a living. What is there to consider? Why would you not go play? Until you can't play anymore. It's like, well, I mean, I love my wife more than I love baseball, and I love my kids more than I love baseball, and I love God way more than I love baseball. And ultimately, at the end of my life, I'm going to answer to God for how I shepherded my wife and how I raised my kids and how I did. I'm confident that God is not going to ask me about my ERA, but He has entrusted to me His daughter to care well for and those children to raise well, and so. Those are just bigger burdens for me. When we look at playing a professional baseball season, it is hard. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of work. And I'm not just talking about me in the gym and me sweating and me having a sore arm or something like that. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think in a lot of ways, I think she has to sacrifice more than I do. And I'm the one doing the job. I'm the one doing it. And so that's just kind of my view of it. I try to be aware of that, and I try and be a good shepherd in that. But there's a lot of, I'll just tell you, there's a lot of functions in my family, a lot of ways that things work in my family that would not function without her. The way that she just has abilities and a seriousness about her and a giftedness about her that she can do it.
Well, so, you guys have such a.
So we continue to do it.
You actually fill in each other's voids.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
She basically, like I said, she was the one that called me, and she asked me all the right questions.
Listen, I'd have probably gone and cut trees down or done something on my own, and she'd have thought she'd go, this is how I know that you need.
She asked me all the right questions.
Oh yeah.
And obviously I must have given her the right answers, because she said, well, I'm going to have Adam, we're going to stop by and, take a look and see if we like it or not. So, obviously, the rest is kind of history. You've been here for that time.
Yep. I think it's been about 2 years now.
Yeah, it's coming up on 2 years. So it's been a good thing.
Yeah.
So I know in the off season, what do you guys do? Do you guys take any kind of vacations where you basically go off with the kids and basically do a thing, or when do you have time, spend your quality time alone?
Yeah.
Or do you?
Yeah, that's another good question. We for us, we spend so much time living out of suitcases. We spend so much time traveling that honestly, for Kendall and I, what we try to do as much as we can possibly do is be together at home. We like I said, we homeschool and things like that, which affords us the ability to be able to bring the kids with us on the road and things like that, and still be able to do the work that we have for them. So as much as is reasonable and as much as we can, she does travel with me on the road during the season. For example, me hopefully leaving soon for Japan. It was a deal breaker for me if they couldn't come at the same time as me, my kids, my wife. And so those are just the kind of things that we just lay out beforehand, just saying, look, we're going to trust the Lord and we're going to do what we think's right. And if it's not acceptable or that's not going to work out between me or some other team or something like that, then we're just at peace with that. And that's just okay. Because for us, the travel and the experience and the opportunities and those things that we get to be a part of, honestly happen mostly during the season. We go to new cities, and one thing that we like to do is when we're in a new town, or when we go to, into these towns that even some of them that we're familiar with, we like to go to like the little breakfast shops and like little places, in different, different towns and stuff. Yeah. Places that we can't go, normally. We like to go, go see what's in the cities and stuff like that. So she travels as much as we can. And during those days, instead of being in the hotel or being in the clubhouse early, we'll go out and do stuff. So we've gone to museums in DC. We've gone up, and that there's a strange elevator. Some people may not know this. I didn't know this. There's a strange elevator in the St. Louis arches or whatever.
I've been in that.
So that's a weird. I can't believe you fit in that thing.
Yeah.
Listen, that thing is like an egg. It's like a So So some worker probably had to shove you down under into
I had
thing.
to contort myself to get up in there.
Yeah, I've been in there. So I get it, man. You're a much bigger man than I am. I get it. I was cramped in there. So we've done stuff like that. We've gone around and seen monuments and gone and done things in different cities. They've been way out west with me. They've been to LA out there and San Francisco, and we've gone to sneaker shops in San Francisco and Haight and Ashbury in San Francisco, and anywhere Colorado, and they're going to come with me to Japan and stuff. So we've had a lot of really cool opportunities through baseball. But during the season, when we're at home, and during the off season, we might take a trip here or there, but for the most part, we're pretty much going to try and stay home as much as we possibly can. That's where we really like to be, and in our church too. I mean, that's where our strongest relationships are, our friends, and so we try and be as involved in that as we can.
Japan should be an interesting. That should be an interesting experience.
Yeah.
And
the kids are excited.
Yeah, and especially with technology being the way it is, you can homeschool as long as you have internet connection and you have Wi-Fi and MacBook.
That's right.
So I'm sure all the kids have all the little technology, all the stuff that we never had.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So do you see yourself staying in Japan? I know you say it's a 1-year thing, but are you interested in coming back to the majors, or you think that if you like it over there, you may just stay and just come back as a as a visitor?
Right. I could probably tell you better if I had been there already.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my first go around of doing it. And I was just saying to somebody the other day, I was out throwing a bullpen the other day at a place down in Jupiter where I've been going and throwing indoor bullpens in there. We've got all the technology. We're using all this stuff I was telling you about, showing you some of the videos before.
Yep.
I was just telling them the other day, I was like, this is the first time in 10 years that I'm not going to be reporting for spring training with the Marlins. So that in itself, I think just then kind of hit me of whoa, this is going to be different, So I know it's certainly going to be a lot different when I finally get over there. And some of the stories that I've heard about, some of the things going on over there. So I'm excited to go see it. I would tell you this, I wouldn't rule out staying longer, and I wouldn't rule out coming back, and I wouldn't rule out, this being it. Again, like I said, we revisit every year, and we've done this for the last several years, really trying to figure out, can we really do this well? I don't want to just do it because it's an opportunity or do it just because I can, but can we really do it well? Can I perform at a high level and help my team win? Can I lead and love and shepherd my wife well when I'm gone for, playing baseball stateside in the major leagues? I'm gone for a week at a time, every other week for 6 straight months. And then during spring training, they're 10-hour days every day with, for 6 straight weeks where I'm, gone better part of the day for that. So it's really a consideration of can I do it well?
Technology helps with that, though.
It
I know
does.
it's not like it's not the same as being there, but when you can FaceTime your
Yep.
kids and
Yep.
they can actually see you, and they
Yeah.
can see your expressions and they could say, they could see you better be good. You need to be good for
Yeah.
mommy.
Yep.
They see that. That's different than
Oh,
you
man.
just being on a phone call and basically not them not seeing your expressions or seeing your eyes, or listening to you. So
It's been super helpful for sure.
it's definitely a boon that's
Oh,
basically
I
made
would,
it.
I've said now for the last year or two that if I could have a flip phone, I would. But the, FaceTime, like you're saying, or needing to go find someplace to eat in some city I've never been in. I mean, that's just how the world works nowadays. You find it on your phone. You follow the directions on your phone to go someplace. I don't know. I wouldn't know where to go otherwise. That's what everybody always says. How did people ever find their way around Seattle before they had GPS on their phone?
Yeah.
And I get lost with the GPS driving around
You have
these big cities.
you have an
you're
iPhone,
trying to use it. Yeah.
So
So the FaceTime and stuff, man, you're right though. I mean, it has been super super helpful with those in those regards, man. Having young kids and that stuff. I mean, we try to utilize that. We try to use our phones wisely. But
You-
that's been a tool that's been very helpful. For
you're
sure.
going to be hooked up with Siri on basically going from English to Japanese.
Well, luckily they're going to give me a translator, and a lot of the staff and the players over there, I think, if they don't speak English, have a pretty good understanding of English. For the last few generations, my understanding is in Japan, it's been required in school for them to take English coming up through school. A lot of those players are younger players and things like that. So I'm pretty hopeful that we can work together. I don't speak fluent Spanish either, but we did fine with the Latin players, that I've played with over the many years,
Right.
and some of them even been pretty good friends with. So yeah, I mean, I think that there is a language that is pretty universal that doesn't always involve speaking, and that is just generally respecting people. For me, for example, I'm coming into their world, so it's not like it's going to be the Adam Conley Golden Eagles, coming over there.
Yeah.
Like, they are the Rakuten Golden Eagles, and like Adam Conley is just humbled enough to just come and just be a part of what it is that they've got going on over there, and excited for the opportunity. So I think with that mindset, I may not be able to speak fluently myself with these guys, but through a translator and through relationships that we'll build in unique ways. Like I said, just I think being respectful, being open-minded, being a good listener, doing things their way. I think that I think that a lot of times is more valuable probably than two guys who can't stop disrespecting each other and butting heads all the time, but they speak the same language perfectly.
So how does that work? Like when I played overseas, there were allowed two foreign players
Mm-hmm.
and two duals, or guys that had dual citizenship.
Yep.
And then basically the rest were nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have that same kind of requirement?
Yep. And so they've had to actually regulate over the years, limiting international players because, and I hope I'm correct in saying this, so don't quote me, but it's I think that there's such an appeal for a lot of those, because they love baseball over there. Like, they love baseball. They're fanatical about baseball over there. Like, I'm really excited to be a part of the atmosphere and everything, that all just the buzz about how much they love the sport of baseball over there, just culturally and everything. But I think that there's this like crazy appetite for them to see like Latin American, like just like players from the major leagues, players from I think it's like fascinating to them.
Right.
In the major leagues, I think that it's a lot more diverse. Like, it's a lot more of like a diverse league, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's there's people.
They pick players from
all,
everywhere.
all over the world. All over the world. I mean, Panama and Venezuela and Puerto Rico and Dominican, and this all over the world.
Cuba.
I mean, right here in America, obviously. I mean, we've got players coming from all over the world. And so to us, it's not that weird. It's not really weird at all when a Japanese-born player takes the mound for, the Seattle Mariners. we don't look at that and we're like, oh, like everybody, like you, like look at that, like look what we get to see today. It's like to them they're like, this guy's a Major League Baseball player, so we're here to watch Major League Baseball. You know,
But over there,
I mean,
well, our society is so like
homogeneous.
You know,
there's some uniqueness to it, and so I think for that reason, I think they've had to actually limit. And I think it's good. I think it's good for it to be limited the way that it is. But I think that I want to say the number is 4 international players, or maybe it's 5, but I want to say it's 4. And that's just anybody that's not native Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So on the team that I signed with, we have a Latin player, a player from Taiwan who's a pitcher, and then I think we have maybe it must be 5 because I think we also have 3 American players. Now with the state of emergency, the borders, all that stuff, everybody who signed this offseason to go play there can't get in right now. With the state of emergency, they don't have residency or a green card, a visa, whatever that looks like, residency there to get back into the country with any kind of documentation. If you don't have that stuff, you're not getting in, which is that's the situation I'm in right now. That's why I'm still here doing a podcast with you. I'm thankful, man, but it's I am excited. I am excited for when I'm able to get over there and just be a part of all that we're talking about here. And I'll let you know all about it when I experience it.
Is the money comparable to what you made here?
Yeah.
Good.
It's there's a lot that's different. But in terms of making money to go play baseball, there's a lot of it that's going to be, I think, very similar, culturally, schedule wise. Kind of you know this, you're going to know this well from playing basketball on all over the world, and now being in training, that there's like ideologies,
right?
Like there's like certain people tend to think certain ways, and basically the diversity of all these ideas is what makes the world so productive, right?
Correct.
Because these people over here have come up with this way to do it, and we've come up with this way to do it, and now we figure out kind of the best of both worlds, and that's what continues to drive all this thought and creation and invention and all these things, right? So I'm looking forward to when I get over there kind of seeing that for myself. I've really only experienced this, but I know that there's going to be a lot different about that. They're going to have a view of arm care, a view of pitching mechanics, a view of these things that are going to be different than what I'm used to.
No.
And so in those areas, it's kind of the same, but it's kind of going to be very different too.
It's a different culture.
Yep.
They have a different.
I'm excited.
Remember that? What was the movie with Tom Selleck?
Oh, I never watched that movie, but I know what you're talking about. I think it's called what is it called? Mr. Baseball or something
Mr.
like that?
Baseball.
Is that what it is? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I know exactly
Mr.
what movie
Baseball.
you're talking about. I've actually never seen that movie, but yeah.
You've never seen that movie?
I've never seen that movie.
Oh, it's hilarious.
But I know what you're talking about, though.
It's hilarious. And you know, I grew up with Tom Selleck, you know, because I used to watch Magnum PI, you know, back in the day. That in fact, we had to be home at a certain time so we could watch Magnum PI.
There you go.
On my little 19-inch, you know, color TV.
Uh-huh.
So, but you know, whenever you go to different, you know, countries. I remember when I playing in England,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, we would, you know, after the game, you know, you'd shake hands and basically, you know, you'd go your way. The other team would go their way, right? After the games in England, right, everybody meets up in the bar and basically they start drinking together.
Both the teams?
Yeah, both the teams, and they start drinking together because all of the games were, the majority of the games were played at these these centers. And every center had a bar.
Yeah.
It was a community center.
Arena or
yeah,
whatever.
An arena.
Yeah.
But they had a bar. It was just, you know, it's a thing in England.
It was
you know,
the common denominator at all the stadiums.
You can't have a recreation center without a bar.
Okay.
You know, a pub. You know, so we would go up and, you know, we'd, you know, sit with the other guys and basically have a couple of pints or, you know, whatever you wanted, and, you know, just talk about the game, talk about how I did you up, you know, or how you know I got did up, you know. So it was kind of interesting. Even when we went to we went to Ireland. We played a game in Ireland. Now this is during the '80s, so you had England and Ireland were not on the best of terms. So we walk into Belfast, and everybody's dressed in paramilitary stuff,
Oh, wow.
and we had a game at a brewery, a game at a brewery, and
Makes
same thing.
sense.
Yeah, we actually everybody's sitting drinking Smithwick's, which was the equivalent of Guinness. So it's all different. I remember my one of my other friends telling me that they playing in Venezuela,
Yeah.
and he said that the before the games the people were so hostile to them. They're throwing pennies and batteries and everything out. They had to have chicken wire around the court, and then after the games they were like friendly, and they were like trying to give them one of their autographs and all kinds of stuff. So yeah,
It's crazy, man.
you're gonna see a different side of baseball. So
I'm excited.
good.
Different baseball. I mean, I've heard the zone's a little different. The hitters are very different, I'm told. I mean, it's all going to be new. It's going to be an experience. I'm
And
excited.
there you are. So how's your arm?
Everything's really good, man. Really good. It turns out, so the last 2 years of my career on paper have actually been really lousy. And what I was trying to do was basically learn how to throw a breaking ball, because I'd been told my whole life I needed to throw a breaking ball, and my breaking ball was never any good. So I finally had determined in my mind, I'm going to scrap everything I've done with my breaking ball, and I'm going to learn how to actually throw a breaking ball, and I'm going to pitch like that. Well, what ended up happening, I didn't know it was happening at the time, was because I was supinating so much with my hand to throw a breaking ball, I actually was losing the early pronation that I have on my fastball and my changeup, which make it so good. So what happened inadvertently over time was I started to learn how to throw a little bit better breaking ball. It still was never very good, but it got a little bit better, and it actually was a breaking ball on the paper and the analytics and all that stuff. But what had happened was because I wasn't pronating so early, my fastball had actually straightened out, and my changeup had actually flattened out and straightened out. And so basically the two best weapons that I had basically became average at best. And in the major leagues, if just about anybody stood in the box against me when I was burning fastballs in there at 97, 98, you'd probably think to yourself, nobody could hit that. Nobody could time that. Well, I'll tell you that one of the first things that I heard when I signed professionally was an older player or a coach or whoever it was that had just met me for the first time. They knew I was a new draft pick, and they came up to me and they say, hey, how hard do you throw? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'll get up to like 97. And they go, it better move or you better throw it where you want. He says, because a big leaguer will time a bullet. That's what they said. And it's true. And I learned that to be true. So what basically happened was my fastball that moved so much and was special, I basically straightened it out, and I was throwing really hard. I mean, I was up to over 99 miles an hour on my fastball at times. I was sitting around 96 miles an hour with my fastball as a left-handed pitcher with a lower arm slot, And basically, because my breaking ball was below average, and because my changeup had flattened out from losing that early pronation, I became a one-pitch pitcher. Well, in the major leagues, if you're a one-pitch pitcher, then I'll tell you a couple things that are going to happen. If you throw the ball in the strike zone, they're going to swing. And if you throw the ball out of the strike zone, they're not. If you're a one-pitch pitcher.
That's usually bad. One is
that's
good,
not good.
One is good and one is bad.
And that's not good for me, right? And so basically what happened was they didn't really have to respect my changeup anymore, and my breaking ball was never really a whole lot of a factor. And so basically what they did was they went up there knowing I was going to throw a fastball 2 out of every 3 pitches. I threw my fastball a lot. They knew that 2 out of every 3 pitches that I threw was going to be a fastball, and they knew that if it was going to be a strike, that they could hit it. And so I really struggled there for about 2 years and couldn't really figure out why I was struggling so much. When I was just getting into the analytics, I was just trying to figure this stuff out, and I just couldn't figure it out. So anyways, becoming a free agent this year really helped me a lot, because I heard an evaluation from just about all the rest of baseball of how they evaluate me. And they basically said, you idiot, stop trying to throw your breaking ball and get your fastball and your changeup moving hard to the left again and keep throwing 99 like you do, and you'll have the success you had before. And I'm sitting here going, how could I have not seen this whole time after getting my teeth kicked out for the last 2 years or whatever. Now last year I didn't pitch and all that, so who knows what would have happened. We already went through that, but so basically in my bullpens now, the super slow-mo camera, the Rapsodo, which is the machine that tracks the pitch movement, the analytics of the spin of the pitch and all that stuff, we've actually used that now to maximize the pitches that are proven effective for me. And then we've learned using the camera and those things how to kind of change, minor changes to the spin direction or just how the ball comes out or where I throw the ball. And it's giving us immediate pitch-by-pitch feedback of what the pitch does.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to use that to basically further increase the movement of those pitches. And then also just mechanically and things like that, you learn throw after throw. You might make a throw and think, ooh, that felt really good. And you look up on the board and it says you threw it 92.5, 92.5 miles an hour. And you go, man, for as hard as I tried throwing that, like that wasn't really that good because it should have been 94, 95 and it was 92, or you think, man, I'm just going nice and easy, just doing this or that, or I'm thinking about this today. And you look at your numbers and it does something to your numbers that, reveals to you, man, when I do this, my ball does this. And so you're constantly learning in this immediate pitch by pitch feedback of what the ball does. Where now it's like, I know in my head, not that I'm going to do this necessarily in the game, but in my head, I know that if I throw my fastball with a 10:30 clock, if the spin is pointed at 10:30 direction on a clock, I know that I'm going to get, X amount of higher V break on my fastball. So if I want to throw my fastball up in the zone, then I'll throw it with a slightly higher spin, axis. It'll be a slightly higher spin. If I want the ball to go, across the plate and move further to the left, then I need to throw it with a lower spin axis, something more like 10:10 on the clock. And I know that my goal with my changeup is to throw it with a 9:30 spin axis because it makes my changeup go 19 to 20 inches to the left. And when I get it to go when my changeup spins at a 10:10 axis or a 10:20 axis like my fastball does, I know it only goes 16 inches to the left. So these are things that I'm learning in literally pitch by pitch. It's the joke was when I talked to the guy who was doing this all for me down there, a guy named Manny Oliveira, who's a guy who used to be with the Marlins, who I've known for a long time. He runs the facility down there. One of the first things he told me working with me with all this stuff is he says, it's like cheating without breaking the rules. That's what he said. And that is so true. I mean, it has been a huge advantage being able to know that pitch by pitch live in the bullpen to be able to learn that stuff.
That's funny because I was going to ask you, looking at your stats from, when you came into the league to current, you started off with, your win-loss was here.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden next year was just a little bit less. And then you were like 8-8. And then all of a sudden you were like, under 500. And then you were like, so what happened? I mean, it was like, but you just explained it.
Yep.
You just explained just because somebody actually came to you and said, hey, you need to throw this.
Well, I wouldn't even just pin it on somebody. I would say that's been everybody my whole life, saying you got to have a breaking ball. You got to have a breaking ball. You got to have a breaking ball to pitch in the big leagues. You need to be able to throw your breaking ball for a strike. You need to be able to backdoor your breaking ball. You need to be able to do this. You need to be able to do that. And I'd heard that my whole life, and so that's what I just kept working on because I believed him. I believed him. And listen, there's a lot of players who don't have breaking balls that develop good breaking balls, and it ends up being their best weapon, no doubt about it. So it's not anything nefarious. I don't think anybody who's over there trying to ruin my career by any means. They're all doing their best to help me and give me what they need. It turns out for me, with my abilities, the way that I work, the way my arm works, that at this point I'm very convinced that a hard slider with a really low pitch usage of that, and basically the rest is going to be an equal use of really hard thrown fastballs and changeups that move a lot, and basically just pitching that way. And that's the version of me that's best. And if pitching like that at 99, 100 miles an hour with a changeup that goes 20 inches to the left and a slider that's 89 to 92 miles an hour, that's just a different look, that stays straight and does some different stuff. If that's not good enough to get guys out, man, then I'm just not fit to play baseball.
There you go.
And so that's kind of where I'm at now with it, which is frustrating to look back on all that time and go, oh man, why didn't I just do this the whole time? I'd probably be under contract with some team as a starter in the big leagues, on a multi-year deal. It's like, but we can't live that way.
It's experience.
We can't live that way. I needed to go through what I went through, and I think, I think back on guys that I've worked with and thinking, if this would have gone different, that I would have missed out on opportunities with these guys. I think of like Mel Stottlemyre Jr., my pitching coach for the last 2 years with the Marlins before this. He was heavy at work with the starters and things like that. Me being a reliever, me being a little bit of a more veteran player and things like that. He kind of, in a sense, more so than some guys, like kind of left me alone a little bit. But just in working with him, I mean, man, he's one of my favorite guys that I've ever known in baseball, ever worked with. And if things were different, I mean, would I have been around still? Would I have still been able to have the opportunity to work with him? And he's just one example, of a multiple, guys that I could give you that I've had the opportunity to play with, work with, that I'm thankful for, man. Like, really, I'm really thankful for that.
It's funny how you, the Marlins have such a Yankee-centric, at least from their coaching. I mean, from Dave Mattingly to Stottlemyre. I mean, all those guys are all Yankee fans. I grew up being a Yankee fan, so just seeing all those guys there now. Jeter, being in the front office. So, but that's definitely interesting. Hindsight's always 20/20, and if you'd have known this, like you said, if you'd have known it a year ago, you might have done something different. But it is what it is. You learned it.
We always like to say, right? Well, if I would have known then what I know now, Well, I mean, we this is all of us, right? So, I mean, I feel like I'm wasting my time and my thought and my effort if I sit around saying, well, I got hosed on this, or if, this guy wouldn't have done that or something. I mean, we can't live that way, man. I mean, listen, we go through the things that we got to go through, and we learn the lessons we best we can, man. Be faithful today. Do the best you can with what you got today and what opportunities you got today, and do your best to learn from the mistakes you make, and you figure it out. And man, that's the world we're all living in. We're all like that. Derek Jeter lives like that, by the way. Okay, like, let me just tell everybody listening, like, Derek Jeter has to learn from his mistakes. Derek Jeter knows things today that he didn't know 20 years ago, that if he would have known them 20 years ago, I'm sure it would have saved him a lot of headache, Yeah. And so we're all made of the same stuff. We're all living in the same world. And it's just the guys, I think, who learn from their lessons best. The guys who are humble enough to learn and change and figure it out, and I mean, those are the guys that are the best off, I think.
It's funny how technology is such a double-edged sword. The technology that helped you to figure out the different spins for your pitches and what you were, where you should actually be as far as as far as your mechanics go. That same type of technology is used to grade you as as to whether you're being efficient or not, and it's used in the front office to decide whether you should be with the Marlins or be with somebody else.
That's no joke.
So it's really kind of it's a double-edged sword. That same, like, I look at basketball players now, and when I remember as I wanted to work on my jump shot, so I took a winter glove, right, old woolly winter glove, took an old sock, cut it in half, stuffed it in the palm of the glove, taped it to my hand, right, and then I would go out and shoot like 200 jump shots, 20 from each of the sides, 20 from the wings, and 20 from the top, till basically the ball never touched my palm. Now you have, like, just technology wise, you have different implements. You have guys that do the same thing. They take I'm sure that they have cameras that actually analyze your jump shot to see the rotation as the ball's coming off of your hand, to see which way it's going. Are you keeping your elbow in? Are you keeping your elbow up? Which is translated into these guys shooting 50% from 24 feet 3 inches. That's the 3-point line or further. It's just such how technology is actually taken and move sports to another level. It's not just about feel. It's about taking the body and moving it to the same thing with athletic training. Guys like you stay healthy, you'll play for another 15-20 years if you
there's guys doing it right now. There's guys doing it right now. And I'll tell you this about the technology thing. It's super interesting. What you were just describing about the putting a glove on your hand, stuffing a sock in there, we've always been trying, with whatever means available, we've always been trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
We've always been doing the work to figure it out. But what's interesting about technology is that, I was at a pitching clinic ran by Tom House, which he was one of the founders of the National Pitching Association. He was Nolan Ryan's pitching coach with the Rangers, pitched for a long time in the big leagues. I know him because he was Pete Wilkinson, who was my pitching coach for a long time, who you've met, who's come into the gym here.
Right.
Pete was his shortstop at USC, and I've worked with Pete for a long time. So that's how I got hooked up with Tom House a little bit. And I ran into him in college and stuff for a few years there. He was the pitching coach at USC and stuff like that. Anyways, I was at a clinic with him when I was a kid. I was like 15, 16 years old. So I guess I was 17 years old or so. And he was telling us about how that they had done a study where they were trying to figure out with all the best tennis players in the world how they hit their forehand so good, how they were so effective with it. And so it was really interesting. I learned this lesson. I'd never forget it. They asked all these tennis players, "What do you do? Tell us what you do that makes your forehand so good. What are you thinking about? Or where are you trying to hit it on the racket? Or what does that look like? What does that move look like?" And so they're all like slow-mo, like walking through, like, "Oh, I do this. I'm thinking about this. I look this way," whatever they said, right? Well, then they went and slow-mo filmed them all doing it. And none of them did what they said they did. Okay? None of them did. And so that's what you're talking about is these guys, it's not like we were deceived. Like, these players did have the best forehand in tennis in the world. Undisputed. I mean, everybody knew it, right? Nobody's deceived by this. But they're sitting there saying, "This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I do. This is how I hit it." And then you look at the camera and it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Argue with the film. It doesn't. You might feel a certain way. You might think a certain way. You can't lie to the camera. You can't lie. Now, you could have a machine that's picking up a ball that's not right or something. Maybe the machine fails or something, and talking about like analytics of a pitch or something like that. But if you're showing me film of me pitching, and I'm trying to tell you that, "Ooh, I really feel this when I throw, and I throw harder when I do this and feel this." If someone can look at the tape and say, "Look at that, you're wrong," what am I going to say? I mean, it's
the tape.
It's on the tape.
I do the same
It's
thing.
on the tape.
I do the same thing with my clients and my people in class. Right? Keep your butt down. My butt is down.
Okay.
Your butt's not down.
Yeah, just give me a second here.
Yeah. Exactly.
Look at that. See that? Does that look down to you? No, sir. It's not down.
Exactly.
It's not down. So that's what it is. I mean, that's one of the biggest things about technology is that you can't fake it. You can't fake. Look, if I feel good a certain way and I throw 98 a certain way and it keeps me feeling good and I can see it on the tape what I'm doing, then it seems pretty foolish to me to sit there and say, "Yeah, hey, I'm gonna go try and do this or that."
Don't fix it if it's not broken.
And it doesn't feel particularly good. And it's like, what's the argument? Like, just look at the numbers. Look at what the number says. Is staying healthy and throwing 98, better than staying healthy and throwing 92? Like, the number's there. The number's giving you the feedback. Okay, I mean, in my world, 98 is better than 92. That's the numbers. Doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel. If you can throw your fastball 98, it's going to be better. Speaking for me, So it's like you can't fake that stuff. That's what I think's been so.
Speaking of pitching,
so helpful.
I need to ask you how you felt when 7 2/3 into the game.
Yeah.
Right. You got a no-hitter going on. Right. You've already thrown more pitches in a game than you've probably ever thrown before.
That's not true, but in the major leagues.
In the major leagues.
In the major leagues, that's right. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think you could see the finish line.
Yeah.
And they decide to pull you. What went on in your head?
I'm going to be maybe the most unpredictable podcast guest you ever have. Maybe I'm the first one, so it's hard to say. But listen, you asked me how were you when you got called up to the big leagues, and I'm like I was furious. It's like you must have been so mad when you got pulled from the no-hit game. 4 outs to go or whatever. Man, I was at peace with it. I don't know. I was at peace with it. I thought that I don't know if it was my history with Donnie or if it was. I don't know what it was exactly. I wasn't convinced that he was going to let me do it anyways. I think I was at 116 pitches or something, I think.
Yeah, 116.
Like at that point. So I mean, even if I get that last out there in, let's say, 4 pitches, and let's say I finish the 8th, and so now I'm at 120. I mean, a 15 pitch inning is a pretty clean inning in the big leagues. That's pretty good. That's kind of what we're shooting for. If you can throw 15 an inning, you're in pretty good shape. So even if I went back out there and threw a fairly clean 9th, and then I'm at 135, and listen, if it was up to me,
were you feeling
we
good
already
at
know.
that time?
Oh yeah, everything's fine.
No injuries, no nicks.
No. And I'm the type of guy too. This is the argument I would make. And like I already said, let me just say this beforehand. Let me give this disclaimer. I was totally at peace with it, and I totally understand the decision, where they're coming from. I totally get it. Like, without going into all of how I get it, like I get it. I get all that's going on in the baseball world and the numbers and everything. So I wasn't surprised that I get pulled. The game's just changed, right? It's just changed. Now, having said that, if it were up to me, I mean, I wouldn't ever come out of any game, right? No hitter.
Of course, none of us.
No hitter.
Of us want to.
No hitter, or just getting buried, right?
None of us
I'm
want
too arrogant and prideful a lot of times too competitive to want to ever come out of a game. But I am the type of guy. I'll tell you, I am the type of guy physically and all that where, man, I might have been pretty tired. It might have taken me a start or so, of resetting a little bit, just because it would be abnormal to throw 135, 140 pitches in a game would have been more than normal. But man, physically, I'm a guy who could do it. Physically, my arm, the way my arm works and everything. I mean, I'm telling you that there is a way of throwing a baseball in my head and mechanically and physically, the way that I've learned and kind of the way that I do that, man, it just works really well. My arm, when I told the guys in Japan, I don't know if they could hardly believe it or if they still think I'm lying or what, I don't know. But, a lot of the guys that I've talked with in baseball, and when I told the guys over there in Japan, when they're trying to learn me and trying to get to know me, I'd tell them, I'd say, yeah, usually once or maybe sometimes about twice a year, maybe my arm will get sore. And they're like, what, what? Like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, yeah. I was like, well, and, I had a game, in spring where maybe my first or second spring outing, I went out there and pitched and I was a little sore after. And then later in that year when I wasn't pitching real good, I threw like 50 pitches in 2 innings or something. And I was a reliever at the time, throwing 97 or something. So I'm like, yeah, after that I was sore for a couple of days after that too. But I mean, otherwise I'm not sore. And so we've talked about this a lot. We've talked a lot about the human body. How does it work? How does it perform? My understanding for many years now, having been well taught, but also putting a lot of thought into this, is that ultimately that throwing a baseball or doing anything rotational is this simple. You have to create of whatever the power you create, whatever you're able to create through whatever your mechanics, your delivery, whatever that looks like. Whatever power you create, you have to get it from the ground, and the power that you get from the ground has to make it efficiently to
your fingers,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
If it's a bat in your hand, then it's the barrel. If it's a ball in your hand, then it's the ball. If it's the football on the ground, and it's your kick. Whatever force you create, it has to come from the ground, and that energy that you created, as long as that energy does not speed up, slow down, or change direction somewhere in your body at the wrong time, as long as that doesn't happen, you're never going to get hurt. You're never going to get hurt. You're never going to be sore. You're never going to get hurt. I'm not some like snake oil salesman guy who's like telling you, right, that like I have a way for you to never feel bad ever again. Look, some guys just aren't built that way. I mean, some guys, like I'm built a certain way that it works too, right? I mean, there's a measure where not every single human being can I just say, hey, just do it like this and nothing bad will ever happen. No, of course not. But I'm just telling you, just again, taking all the other details, all the other variables, all of it out of it. If you create force in the ground and you got 100%, nobody does this, but if you could get 100% of that force that you created in the ground, if you could get it all into the baseball when you throw it, then how could it be possible for anything to break? How could it be possible? If everything's on time, if everything's synced up, if everything lines up and gets to the ball,
the caveat.
How is it possible?
Add the caveat that the tissues are ready to go, that are ready to basically to accept that force.
that's where the training, diet, the sleep, yes,
Exactly.
of course. And I've told guys that. I've worked with a lot of guys. I've watched a lot of guys throw. I've given lessons. I've done a lot of things. I've watched a lot of video. Look, if you try your best to throw the way that I'm describing throwing, but you sleep 4 hours a night, get drunk 5 nights a week, eat McDonald's every other meal, like you're not going to perform, right? I mean, I'm kind of saying all this with the assumption that you're acting like a professional, that you care for yourself, that you get rest, that you drink good water, you eat good food, you're just a professional. Like if you're handling your work like a professional and you're doing these things, you're not going to get hurt. You're not going to get hurt. And that's why when the guys who stay healthy and throw hard for a long time, it just looks automatic, right? They make it look easy, right? It's because you're not seeing that power that they're creating in the ground. You're not seeing it speed up, slow down, or change directions in the wrong place. That's why it looks good. It's why it looks smooth. It's why it looks easy. The power that they're creating, first of all, they create a lot of power. And to a more efficient degree than everybody else, they get the power they created to the bat or to the ball or to their foot or to whatever it is. At the end of the day, Nolan Ryan was the hardest throwing pitcher for 27 years because the guy, and he stayed healthy because he created a lot of force and he got the force into the baseball. The force wasn't in his elbow. The force wasn't in his neck. It wasn't in his glute. It wasn't in his oblique. It came from the ground and he got it to the baseball. And that's why the baseball went 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And he did it over and over and over and over again. And I mean, when I say over and over again, like 27 years, the dude stayed healthy. I just called Nolan Ryan the dude. But he stayed healthy and he threw hard, like really, really hard. If I throw in such a way that I'm never quite on time and I'm always having to abbreviate the throw, or I'm having to yank something short, or I've got a bad glute that I just never really address and never really work on, or I've got a bad back that's just never really right, or I don't do arm care after I throw, or I don't get enough sleep, or I don't have a good diet, listen, then I don't care what you tell me about what you think is going to work. Like, it's just not going to work. You're a human being, and you've got to fuel yourself up and take care of yourself right, or it's going to break no matter what. No matter what you do.
At some point, you're going to break down.
No matter what.
So, how much time do you think do you spend, would you say, of your day on just care?
Yeah. Between
training, between nutrition, between bullpens,
Mm-hmm.
How much time of your day do you think, how many hours a day do you think you spend?
Yeah,
how many days a week?
Which day it is certainly would determine what I do. There's some days, and I know a lot of people there's going to be a lot of people, hopefully a lot of people listen to this, and there's going to be a lot of people probably who aren't going to like what I'm about to say. But I'm going to tell you, one of the most underrated things in training, in pitching, in whatever it is, one of the most underrated things out there is rest.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you why it's so underrated. And a lot of people are going to get mad for me here saying this, but telling people that they need to rest isn't going to make you any money. And it's not going to promote your business, and it's not going to make you bigger, and it's not going to make you more popular. And the dad whose dream it is for his 16-year-old son to be a major leaguer like he was and all that is not going to want to go pay money to the guy who tells him, no, stop bringing him here so much. Stop bringing your kid in here 6 times a week. He's 16 years old. Have him go shoot hoops in the backyard.
I've done that.
Have him go fish. It's not gonna promote their business. It's not gonna make them popular. It's not gonna sell. It's not gonna make them a bunch of money. It's not gonna be a fad that everybody's gonna jump on. Because, listen, it's just how it is. Everybody wants to sell the program for $500, the weighted ball program that guarantees your kid 3 more miles an hour on his fastball or your money back or whatever. Everybody wants to jump on that one, right? That's just the culture we live in. I'm going to tell you this right now. As I have grown in my understanding of these things, I have actually done less work. Now, I want to be careful how I say all this and make sure I disclaim some of this. I do less work now probably than I ever have in my life. But everything I do
has a purpose.
There's a purpose for it, and I try to do it absolutely perfectly. absolutely perfectly every time, the whole time I'm doing it, and then I'm done, and that's it. And so I'll tell you, when I was younger, I had the other mentality of, I'm going to come to the gym and I'm going to lift until I can't walk to the truck, until I can't walk out of the gym to the truck. I'm going to lift so hard today that I'm going to be cussing in my head, having to try and turn the steering wheel with my arms in the truck when I drive home. That was my mentality. Literally, these are the thoughts that I would think in my head. That's how I'm going to do my business today. And I've shifted from, again, it comes from a lot of growing up, not being very talented. I had to work really hard. I had to do a lot of things to keep up with everybody. And I learned over the years that what I was actually probably doing in a lot of that work was probably setting myself back to a degree.
Well, there's a certain school of thought. Like, I tend to, you're further into your career than most of the kids out there that need to work on building a foundation of strength.
100%. And I've seen you do that with some of the younger, some of the younger athletes in here, and I 100% agree with it.
And I watch 100%. I've watched your workouts before. Another caveat of your workouts are, you have a time and a block where you're doing volume stuff.
Yep.
You're basically working on volume.
Yep.
And strength exercises. Yep. And basically, and everything that you do has a purpose. And then, there's another time where it's not so much volume. Mm-hmm. It's more about, more quality of movement and actual, explosive movements.
Yep.
And then, that's the focus. And that's kind of like the classical strength and conditioning model, where you're actually doing something with a purpose. So, as you get older, there's not really a need for you to get, bigger and faster, because you're not. You've gotten to that point where you're going to be as big and as fast as you want, but you need that longevity.
Yep.
So you work on things to basically help extend out your longevity as a professional, because this is obviously your job.
That's right. So,
there's a time and a place for everything, but you're right. I mean, there's I remember, a guy bringing me his kid that was 10,
yep.
And basically saying, hey, I want to put him in a program to have him, start training. Big kid. How old is he? He's 10. You want my advice? Or do you want me just to tell you something?
Yep.
I said, you need to go out and just have him play.
Yep.
Have him skip. I mean, I can work with him on his, just on his mechanics. I'm not going to put any weights in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, what if the kid tears a growth plate at 12 years old trying to lift a weight?
Exactly.
It's like, is that going to benefit him later on?
Exactly.
I mean, he's got time to get strong. He's got time to get big.
You want him to have a good foundation of a lot of things.
Yep.
Have him run.
Yep.
Have him skip.
That's huge, man. That's what I do with my boy.
Learning
jump
how
on
to,
this box, skip backwards, run in place.
All the things
shuffle.
that we did as children, playing tag, translated into, athletic movements, later.
Running back in the NFL.
Exactly.
Never lost a game of tag in your life, and all of a sudden you're a running back in the NFL.
Never jumped on a plyometric box as a as a kid, but I did jump, playing tag on, to some turtle, to get away from somebody. I did actually, decelerate and basically change direction, keep somebody from tagging me. So all that stuff is, technology is a good thing, but there's a place and a time for it. And I try to at least guide people into the, when they should and when they shouldn't actually, put weights in their kids' hands, know. And then you also get to the point where you don't, the kids don't love sports anymore. They get to a point where they get burnt out.
Yep.
They don't have that love like you at 7, where you've got a goal and the only thing that you can see is that goal. They get burnt out, and by the time they're like 18, they hate sports and they basically don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yep.
When they have the choice to basically not play anymore, they stop playing.
Yep.
So it's it's one of those things. Even me, I mean, I was looking at my my training log, and I've got 400 workouts in over 2 years. I actually started logging them in 2018, and I've got 400 workouts. It's crazy, but it just builds up time after time. Because I look at my volume, I look at my even at my age, I have to look at my volume because I'm old enough to be your dad, and my body isn't quite as built as it was before. And I don't want to get injured. So. But you do the same thing. I mean, I see you with your training logs. I see you with you're right. Do you keep all your logs together?
Yep. Yeah, I think that you want to.
When did you start?
You want to document the work that you do. I would say it's not always sure that you're always going to flip back through that stuff and use it, but you're really at a loss if you need to or you want to and you can't. And so I've always felt like logging what I do and writing it down and organizing it has always helped me measure progress, measure whatever. So I mean, if I've got I'll even put notes on there. So I'll have a day where I might have scheduled on a trap bar deadlift. I might be intending to go heavy that day. And I want to, I might even be doing, it might be a super low volume, super high intensity day. Maybe I want to do like 5 sets of 3 or something on a trap bar deadlift. And I'm going to try and get that thing up, that last set or 2 up there. I'm going to try and get it up there as, I'm going to lift basically as much as I can. And basically the rest of my lift is all built around that. Okay. So if I get up to, if my last set of 3 on a 5 of 3, right at my last like power phase, right at like when I'm my strongest, it's December, it's January, I'm the strongest I'm going to be all year, and I get up to, if I'm doing 475 or something on a trap bar deadlift for my last set, I might do those 3 on my last one, and I might lift it really really well, and I might go no I'm doing it again, I'm going to do another set. Or I'll do a 1, or I'll do a 2, or something. But on another day, I may not make it. I may not, I might have lifted so heavy early on, or I don't feel good, or something happens. I got something else going on, a bullpen, whatever it is, anything else that could be going on. Then I'll adjust that as I need it, but I'll log that on there, and I'll write why. I'll write what was going on or what happened. A lot of times, if it's someplace unique, I'll write where I worked out.
Right.
So that I know when I go back to look at that log, I know that if I see anything on there that's a little weird, the numbers aren't matching up or the exercise isn't quite matching up, that I know that it was, I was in Mississippi hunting Panther Swamp that week, and so that's why my numbers and my machines and my workouts look different, because I wasn't at my gym, I wasn't at my home gym. So logging that stuff is super valuable. Just generally speaking, above all that, I would just say, how much do you care about your work? How important is your work to you? Because your life is going to display how valuable it is to you. If I just show up and kind of just do what I feel like doing and just don't really discipline myself to get through my sets and my reps and just don't really have a plan and I just kind of show up, well, then you're going to reap what you sow.
Exactly.
And so when I log these things and when I make these plans and when I set this stuff out, man, there's some accountability even on my own end from sitting there going, man, it seemed like a good idea last night on my couch when I wrote week 1 of this new phase that I'm doing. This seemed like a good idea to do this. And I'm halfway through this lift now and I'm feeling like not doing it. It's like, well, now there's some accountability of me of, no, when I was thinking rightly about this and when I thought well about what this workout should look like, this is what I determined was going to be good. This is what I determined was going to be good work for today. And it doesn't matter how I feel now today about it. This is what I've determined is going to be good work for me. And so that's what I do. And it helps me in an accountability of that way.
It's always funny because I get that same kind of feeling. Like I will look at my workout, the next day's workout, and you always know when your workout is good when you start like getting a little antsy, a little anxious about. You're like, damn, I'm gonna have to do 5. I got 5 sets of Bulgarians.
Oh man! And when you wrote it too, you're like, why am I writing this?
Why am I doing this?
I know I need this, but
why am I doing
but
this?
This is my arch enemy here.
And I tell the kids that whenever I'm working with them, that if you don't get a certain sense of anxiousness and dread, then the workout's not challenging enough for you.
Yeah.
You got to have a certain amount of challenge.
Or it's not what you need. If there's no limit to your back squat, let's say, if you can just squat the house on a barbell, just straight up back squat, but that's all you ever do because that's just what you're good at.
Exactly.
That workout's not good enough.
You're not.
And you might be squatting the house. Everybody might be stopping to watch you. Look at that guy. Look at that guy. If that's all you're doing, then ultimately, again, like what we would talk about and what we so agree on is that the workout that you're doing is relative to you. So if I can squat 500 pounds 10 times, which I can't, but if I could, and I went in there and did that, and nobody else in the gym can squat 500 pounds 10 times, but it's easy for me, well, then what did I really do?
Yeah.
Who cares if I can squat more than the other guy? I'm not working out for him.
You're working out for you.
I'm working out for me, so it's all relative to me. If my goal is to go throw a baseball better than any other person on planet Earth, then I should do my work accordingly. I shouldn't go do my work in a way that's convenient or easy for me. I should go do it with the goal in mind that I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to perform. I have a task. There's a job that I'm trying to do that I need to physically, mentally, emotionally, everything be prepared for. And a lot of that preparation doesn't only come when I'm throwing my bullpens on the mound. A lot, even what I just said, even the mental, even the emotional, even all that preparation, a lot of that comes from the training, too.
It all starts there.
So if you're undisciplined in that, then how am I going to expect to be disciplined? How do I think that discipline is just going to come at my beck and call?
It's not.
If I'm never disciplined in anything else in my life, I have to be disciplined all the time. If you ever expect to be disciplined in anything at all, you have to live that way.
It started when you were 7.
I guess so.
And it's worked out all the way till you're 30.
I guess so, man. I guess so.
So, in conclusion, summary, I think, I don't know, when you get to Japan, with the wonders of technology, maybe we'll be able to stay in contact. We'll do a podcast with you when you're over there, just to kind of give us an idea of how it's going.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Or you might be just, hopefully, I think you're going to have a breakout season this year, especially after everything that's gone on. You deserve to have a breakout season. You've worked hard enough to where you should have a breakout season.
Thank you.
And hopefully it turns back into another shot at the majors, because don't you have to have 10? You have to get 10 in.
Yeah, that's what they all say, man. But listen.
If you so choose to, after your yearly.
Yeah, that's right.
Your yearly
6
review.
more times or something.
Your yearly review, of
right.
the state of the Conley family.
That's right.
So, Adam, it was a pleasure to actually, for you to come and actually be the inaugural podcast.
Honored.
So,
yeah.
And hopefully you'll have a great season, and that's it.
Thank you, brother. I enjoyed it.
All right.
All right, man.